Well, hey, welcome to Dad class. You guys ready? I think we need like granddad class. Maybe great granddad class with some of you guys. Ooh. You know there's 5 love languages, right, for women. There's a 6th one for men, sarcasm. So that's how you know a guy loves you, is when he trash talks you. Hey, it's great to be with you guys here this morning. I'm excited to talk to you this morning about this topic and about being a dad, being a granddad, being a mentor. And really, we're going to talk about some very, very practical skills or practical lessons that you can teach to your kids or grandkids or people that you're mentoring. But first, let's do this. Let's give a shout out to Bruno. Everybody say, hey, Bruno. All right, Bruno's leading a group called Reflection, 6 guys at Rock Falls Baptist in Orick, Missouri, or as they say there, Missouri, right? And looking to build each other up through accountability, purpose, and Christian development. Great group of guys out there in Orick. And if you're watching this online and you have never had a shout out from us, we would love to give you a shout out. So email Patrick Morley at maninthemirror.org and let us know about your group, how many guys are in your group, when you meet, who's in charge, so we can yell out, hey, Bruno. That was horrible. Let's try that again. Hey, Bruno. So we'll shout out your name and your groups. Let's give these guys a round of applause for joining us. So we're in the Fatherhood Challenge. We're talking about on this journey to biblical manhood. We're in Challenge 4. We've been through 3 challenges so far, and this is the 3rd session in Challenge 4, and we're talking about fathering. And today we're going to go to Dad class. So we've got these faith and life objectives. Everybody grab those cards off the table. We got the faith and life objectives. So we've talked about understanding how to disciple our children and grandchildren to love God and others. And rather than fathering for performance, that was the first week. And then I will have made discipling my children, grandchildren, or mentoree a top priority in my life. Pat talked about how do your kids know that you love them? And that's one of the ways is by setting good boundaries. And then finally, I will encourage and pray for my children, grandchildren, or mentoree daily, which is super important for us to do, is to really think about how we can daily feed into the lives of our kids, our grandkids, and the young people that God has called us to mentor. So let me ask you this question. So this is our thing, Dad class. All right, we're having a little Dad class this morning. So let me ask you, what was your favorite class in school? Recess over here. I knew that was going to come up. What was your favorite class in school? Math. Who else? Science, history, business law. Wow. What else? Anybody else? Lunch. Dating. That was not a class, McCurdy. Well, you know, I think my favorite class, this is gonna sound a little geeky, all right? My favorite class was Latin. Now, Latin. I wish, I don't know if they caught that on the tape, but if you could hear that Latin over the whole side of the room over here went Latin, like, yeah, Latin. Now, I did not like Latin that much. I'm just going to be honest. I didn't like Latin. What I loved was my Latin class. All right. Now, why do you think I love my Latin class? What was it? The teacher. I loved Latin because of the teacher. Somebody said the girls. It was Latin class, guys. Not a lot of pretty girls took Latin, okay? But the teacher was Dr. Five-Ash. That was his name, Dr. Five-Ash. I had him all, I had 10th, 11th, 12th grade, I had Latin with Dr. Five-Ash, all right? I had to take it the first year to do a language requirement, and I was sick of French, right? And so I took Latin with Dr. Five-Ash. And Dr. Five-Ash made Latin come alive, you know? And so I loved going to Latin class because of my teacher. And so, let me ask you this. How many mathematicians are there in the room? There's 4 mathematicians in the room. How many of you had to take math in school? How many of you? How many of you just aren't going to raise your hand no matter what I ask? Seriously, how many of you had to take math in school? Everybody had to take math in school, right? And there's 4 math guys in the room. There's 4 mathematicians in the room. Why in the world would you all have to take math? Now let me ask you this. How many dads are there in the room? Yeah, how was your dad class? Did you have dad class in school? So there's 4 guys that are here are mathematicians. Everybody had to take math. Everybody becomes a dad, just about. And they never give us dad class. How dumb is that? That they never do even some basic teaching to our kids about what it means to be a good dad, what it means to be a good mentor to somebody else. And so this is why I think having dad class is so important. So we're going to talk about a couple of practical things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is sort of some framework ideas about serpents and doves, master and apprentice, and then we're going to talk about 3 skills. I'll fill those in as we go, but we're going to talk about 3 skills. So I want you to notice that in your outline, it's probably a little bit different. You're going to have to add a couple of circles to your outline if you're using the handout that we normally use. So we're going to talk about serpents and doves, masters and apprentices, and then we're going to talk about some practical skills this morning. So let's talk about what you need to teach your kids, how to teach them. How many of you have heard of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad? It's a book by Richard. It's spelled like Kawasaki, but I think it's pronounced Kiyosaki. Kiyosaki, yeah. Richard Kiyosaki, and he wrote this great book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the point of the book was this: he and his friend, his best friend, both had really good dads. Okay. His friend's dad, however, he learned from his friend's dad how to manage money correctly, what sort of the meaning of money was, a wise way to deal with money. And from his own dad, he didn't learn that. Now here's the funny thing. His own dad had a great paying job and loved his son very much. All right? But that wasn't enough in this area of money anyway. It wasn't enough for him to learn the things he needed to learn in order to be a successful adult when it came to managing his money. From that, he had to learn from this other dad. And so there's practical things that we need to teach our kids. This is just one example. There's practical things that we need to teach our kids, that we teach our grandkids, that we can mentor younger men in, that go sort of beyond the emotional stuff, the love stuff. That's great. I'm not discounting that at all. That's the foundation for it all. But at some point, we need to get practical. We need to give our kids real skills that will help them get along in the world. Jesus talked about being wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Now, I want you to understand that those 2 things were not opposite from each other. Okay? They're actually 2 separate things. We see serpents and doves, and so we think, well, they must be opposite things. It's not opposite at all. Wise as serpents is just the idea of being opportunistic, of being aware, of having wisdom in the world. Why? Because right before that he said, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. And we're sending our kids out in the world as Christian kids, and they are like sheep among wolves. It is a dangerous world for our kids. And so you need to be as wise as serpents when you walk into the world. But we also need to make sure that our kids aren't cynical. And so when he says as innocent as a dove, he means as guilt-free. Like a dove was what you brought to sacrifice because the dove represented sinlessness, right? So he's not talking innocent like naive. He's talking innocent, like guiltless. So we need to help our kids live a life of wisdom, right? But also of sinlessness. This is sort of an overarching paradigm that we need to think about when we're teaching our kids.
A child needs to know that it doesn't make any difference whether I get picked for the team or the honor society or I'm wandering with the cool kids. I know that my dad really loves me. If you're designing a path and there is a place that there is danger for the motorist, you put a guardrail there. And it's the same way if you're a father. When you're helping to design the path your child is going to take and you're trying to help them navigate that, you see the places where there is potential danger and you put up guardrails. And if you don't, your kid will think that you don't care about them. A child can accidentally turn out wrong, but turning out right is no accident. Yes, I love you, and no, you can't have your own way.
Every church leader we know wants to see their men become disciples of Jesus Christ. So why is this so difficult? It's difficult because desire is not enough. You also need a strategy. Developed out of Man in the Mirror's work with thousands of churches, the No Man Left Behind model helps you implement an intentional strategy to disciple all your men, and it's customizable to your church. More than 10,000 leaders have been through this practical, proven leadership training. According to a recent survey, churches who intentionally implemented the No Man Left Behind model experienced, on average, a 48% increase in the number of men attending church in 2.5 years. Even more significantly, they reported an 84% increase in the number of men actively engaged in ongoing discipleship. You want to disciple men to lead powerful lives transformed by the gospel. We want to help you do it.
I'm pretty sure that all of you have men in your churches, not only like my dad, who are going to pull the plug on church, but you have guys like my grandfather who are going to pull the plug on their families.
And so the idea is to engage someone who needs Christ, introduce him into a relationship with Christ, and get him started on his discipleship journey. To take a cultural Christian, help him understand what a real commitment to Christ looks like and how to live that out. Get him moving forward. A biblical Christian to become more oriented towards leadership, towards serving others, reaching others.
It's a way of looking at the things that the church does and helping to maximize the impact, the kingdom impact, of every interaction our church has with every man. From the UPS driver, to the guy singing on the praise band, to the guy working in the nursery, working in the parking lot, handing out bulletins, and collecting offering as an usher, wherever men are in the church, all of those activities are an opportunity for us to help a man become discipled.
With No Man Left Behind, your team will develop a written game plan through practical teaching, hands-on planning, and guided discussion.
This conference has been very exciting. All that I've gotten, I can't wait to get back to my church and give back to those men what I've gotten.
The No Man Left Behind conference showed me a new way of discipleship for all men, both in and outside the church.
The all-inclusive concept was very revolutionizing to me. I've never heard that and really blessed my life, and I just want to thank you for all that you've done for us.
God is going to be glorified because of how he works through you to transform the hearts and minds of men, and that in turn is going to help transform the world.
Right? But also of sinlessness. This is sort of an overarching paradigm that we need to think about when we're teaching our kids. And Hunter and Riley are over here. Hey guys, wave at me. You got to get the camera on these guys. So this is Hunter and Riley. Hunter is I'm guessing the serpent, and Riley I'm guessing is the dove. All right, in this little pairing here, and their grandpa's nodding. Yes, exactly. But you need both, right? You've got to be as wise. We got to help our kids be wise and live in a sinless way. So how do we do that? What's the best method to do that? So who here had shop? Did anybody have shop class? Did you love shop class? Yes. No. Yeah. Who didn't love shop class? Sorry. Everybody else loves shop. He probably had a crappy teacher. That's why. So we love shop class. So let me ask you this. How did your shop teacher run his class? Like, how did you learn from your shop teacher? If you had to, what's a project that you had to do in shop? Say that again? Say right there. A bookshelf. All right. So how did your shop teacher teach you how to build the bookshelf? What did he do? He made one first, right? So he probably said, today people, probably like the 22 boys and 3 girls that were in the class, right? It was shop class. We're going to make a bookshelf. He told you what you were going to do, right? Yep. And then he probably maybe even had some plans, right? So he walked you through the plans. And then, it wasn't actually probably until he did that, then he would actually get some wood out and he would make the bookshelf. And then what? Then what?
You'd have to replicate what
You'd have to make what he made, right? So he would give you wood, he would give you the plans, and he would have you make what he made. And then what was the last step? Grading. All right? So this brings us to, this is what a shop teacher does. So think about now a master and an apprentice. Okay? A master and an apprentice. What does a master want to do? He wants to teach, right? He wants to help his apprentice master what he's already mastered. Okay? So this is Jesus, the shop teacher. He tells you what you're going to do, then he shows you what you're going to do, then he holds you accountable for doing it yourself. Right? A master with an apprentice. He shows the apprentice what they're going to do. He tells them what they're going to do, then he shows them what they're supposed to do, and then he holds them accountable for doing it themselves. And so this is our big idea. To become a master, an apprentice must be taught, shown, and held accountable. To become a master, an apprentice must be taught, shown, and held accountable. Who's the master in this relationship that we're talking about right now? JC. Right? In the practical, Jesus is our master, and for the disciples, they were the apprentices, right? So what did Jesus want for his disciples as the master? What did he know was going to, he said that he wanted them to do greater works. Why? Because he was doing what? Leaving. Right? He said, look, I'm here with you for a time. I'm going to teach you. Right? Sat around and taught them. Then he showed them. What things did he show them? Miracles, right? He healed people. They watched him teach. And then he said, you're going to do greater works than me. And that was holding them accountable. So you as a master, when you have an apprentice, when God brings a son or daughter into your life, when God brings a grandson or granddaughter in your life, when God brings a young person that needs mentoring, listen, half of all of our young men ages 20 to 35 have lived in a period of time in a household without a dad. All right? What's the answer to that? We're the answer to that. We're the answer to that. So we need to go find apprentices so that we can be the master for them and that we can raise them up to be what? To be masters. Jesus said, you're going to do greater things than me. I want you to do more, even more than I did. Why did he say that? Well, there were 12 of them and one of Jesus for one thing. And Jesus had 3 years and he knew they were going to have much longer to do that. And then he knew that was going to multiply out through the generations. And that's the vision that a master gives his apprentice. Hey, I'm going to teach you how to be a great blacksmith. You're going to make better swords than I've ever made. I'm going to teach you how to build boats. You're going to build better boats than I've ever built. That's what a master does. Pat used to say to me, he still says it once in a while, he's like, look, I want you to have greater impact than I have. Now, it's kind of humbling and a little scary for Pat Morley, 4 million books in print, to look at you and say, I want you to exceed me. But that's what a master says to an apprentice. I want you to exceed me. But the only way that an apprentice can become a master is if the master is diligent to teach, show, and then hold the apprentice accountable and help him grow up.
You're going to have to start, right?
Yeah. All right. So as the master, then let's look at 3 skills. Now, before we do this, here's what I want you to do. We're going to do a little exercise at the table, okay? So what I want you to do at your table, I want you to pick one guy at the table, pick the job that you have, okay? And then what are 3 skills, right, really quick. You have a minute. What are 3 skills that you would want to teach a new person entering your profession? What are 3 skills that you say, oh, I got to teach them these 3 things. You ready? So pick somebody's job, and then what are the 3 skills? Go. You got a minute. All right, here we go. So we'll just share. I want to hear from a couple of tables. What was the profession that you picked? What was the job? And then what were the 3 skills? Who? Just raise your hand, and then I'm going to have you stand up and say it. Who did it? All right, stand up. You got to stand up. That's all right.
I was in procurement for 40 years.
Okay, in procurement. And what's the 3 skills that you teach a new guy? Research. Negotiation. And closing the deal. That's good. ABC. Always be closing. So who's another one over here? All right, John.
We figured everybody's been involved in sales one way or another.
All right, so sales, and the 3 skills would be
Listening skills.
listening,
Learning your products.
learning the product,
And how to ask for the money.
and how to ask for the money. Good. So there's a little theme developing here. One more. All right, in the back.
We just got a general idea. We said, learning how to manage your money.
Okay, managing your money.
Yeah, learn how to talk in front of people.
Learning how to talk in front of people, like right now, yeah.
And learn how to surrender.
And learn how to surrender. Interesting. All right, good. So let me give you the 3. Here's the 3 that we're going to talk about this morning. All right. The dad class this morning. Here's 3 essential skills that I think we need to teach our young people. All right. How to love your spouse. 2, how to handle money. And 3, how to win a fight. How to love your spouse, how to handle money, and how to win a fight. All right, are you ready? We're going to go through these pretty quick. So let's talk about how to love your spouse. I think that there's a few lessons that we need to teach our kids when we're teaching them how to love their spouse. The first one is this, that when you are married, you are one flesh. And that's a pretty deep ramification if you think about that, right? Jesus said in Matthew 19:4, said, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the 2 shall become one flesh, right? So they are no longer 2, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. If you're going to teach a young man or a young woman, someday you're going to have a spouse, all right? You're going to have guys, you're going to have a wife, women, you're going to have a husband. You are one flesh. Your job is to create a relationship that nobody can come in the middle of, that nobody can separate you. Unity, all right? How do you do that? Well, one thing is you need to help each other reach your potential. Your job in your loving your spouse is not to hold your spouse back, but to help your spouse reach their potential. Look at Proverbs 31. I love this chapter. It's actually a chapter about women, about a good wife, okay? But I want you to think about this when you look at Proverbs 31. This good wife is able to do a lot of things. She's actually a very shrewd businesswoman, but she's a wife. So there's a husband who is enabling, empowering, supporting her to do this. There's nothing in this chapter about a woman like sneaking around behind her husband's back to be a successful businessman. He's in on it.
Hello, I'm Pat Morley, founder and co-CEO at Man in the Mirror.
And I'm David Delk, president and co-CEO.
As you probably know, we have a devastating men problem in America. There are men all over this country who are confused, isolated, lonely, afraid, and caught up in destructive behaviors. They don't feel like their lives matter, they don't feel like they have a purpose, and they lack direction. These men have exchanged the truth of God for a lie and the glory of God for an idol, or idols. 72 million men in America make no profession of faith in Jesus. And it shows in our culture. And of those who do profess faith, only a fraction are actually living biblically faithful lives as disciples of Jesus.
In addition to the men problem, America also has a church problem. While every church wants to see men discipled, many churches are pulled in too many directions and don't have the resources to focus on discipling their men. Churches typically don't have the manpower or the expertise to intentionally meet men right where they are and help them grow in Jesus Christ.
At Man in the Mirror, our vision is to help every church disciple every man. Since 1991, we've helped more than 35,000 churches impact over 12 million men. And we've learned from thousands of churches the key principles that need to be implemented in order to build sustainable and effective discipleship ministries with men. We know that these ideas work. In a 2010 survey, we found that churches that have implemented our model, called No Man Left Behind, see an increase in the number of men attending their church by 48% in just 2.5 years. And they also see an 84% increase in the number of men involved in discipleship. How is that even possible? We couldn't believe these results at first ourselves, so we had them verified by a PhD who confirmed the findings.
When we saw these results, we realized that God had given us a trust. And 1 Corinthians 4:2 says that he who's been given a trust must prove faithful. So we began to ask the question, what does faithful look like? We came to the conclusion that the thing churches needed the most were trained experts in their local communities who could walk alongside them to help them implement an intentional and sustainable strategy to disciple all their men. So we launched a field staff initiative that has trained and equipped more than 90 men from all over the country. These men are now helping churches create an environment where the Holy Spirit inspires men to engage in life and life discipleship.
And after only 2.5 years, the results are very encouraging. In a recent survey, churches told us they're discipling an average of 15 new men after engaging with one of our field staff. 97% said they would be quite likely or extremely likely to recommend our field staff to another church. God is moving in the lives of churches and men, and we are praying for a revival that shakes our nation and the world for the glory of God.
Amen. So if you have a passion to see men become disciples, please pray about joining us in this vital initiative. Men who complete the application and interview process will be offered the opportunity to become field representatives of Man in the Mirror. We'll train and equip you to start working as a volunteer with a handful of churches every year right away. You may feel called to move from this part-time role into pursuing a career as an area director. With additional training, our area directors are commissioned to work with an assigned territory of about 1,000 churches. There are full-time, part-time, and volunteer positions available as area directors.
Both the field representatives and area directors are trained experts in men's discipleship and provide local churches with encouragement, coaching, and concrete help to actually disciple men. We've been blessed. God has supernaturally assembled a team of godly, gifted men and women who love Jesus and each other and are passionately and urgently committed to solving the men problem. No matter how our nation got into the current situation, the only solution is to disciple our way out. We cannot, we must not, and by God's grace, we will not fail. This is your invitation to join us in the battle for men's souls. Click on Take the Next Step and get started today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. These three cannot exist
One nation,
without this.
under God, indivisible,
Under God.
Indivisible,
with liberty,
with liberty
and
and justice for all.
Some things were never meant to be independent.
So there's a husband who is enabling, empowering, supporting her to do this. There's nothing in this chapter about a woman like sneaking around behind her husband's back to be a successful businessman. He's in on it, right? In fact, he's trusting her for it. So look, let me give you two specific verses. Verse 11 says this: the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. When you help a guy understand that your job with your wife is to help her reach her potential, there's a little bit of self-servingness in this, right? Because when you trust your wife and she reaches her potential, you gain, guys. How cool is that? Right? And then look at verse 25. It says her strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. How many women do you know are scared of the future? Are worried about safety and security and stability, right? Not this woman. This woman laughs at the future because she's so confident. How could a woman do that? Because she has a husband who's helping her reach her potential, who's supporting her. This is how we need to teach young men, and frankly, it's what we need to teach young women to expect. That your husband is there to help you reach your potential. That husbands are there to help their wives reach their potential. And vice versa, right? A wife's job is also to help her husband reach his potential so that she can feel good about the future. And then finally, we've got to teach our kids to love sacrificially. To love sacrificially. We love to start at Ephesians 5:25, but let's go up a couple verses and let me tell you what loving sacrificially looks like, because it looks differently for men and women. All right? Ephesians 5:22. Wives, anybody a wife in here? All right, so this verse isn't for you, it's for them. All right? Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church. Now, I know a lot of people don't like it when you do this, but I'm going to get into the Greek here really quick, okay? The husband is the head of the wife. This is a word that means leader, not Lord, not... Lord actually wouldn't be a terrible word if we would have the concept correct, but we don't have the concept correct. But it means leader. So what's a leader do in a battle? Yeah, he's in front. Right? He's at the head of the charge. He's the first one to be in danger. Okay? Of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and this head is a different word. This word means source. Okay? Source of life. We need to teach our guys that your job one of your jobs in your marriage is to be the source of life in your marriage. Not to be the source of frustration, not to be the source of disappointment, not to be the source of life in your marriage. It's a huge responsibility to love sacrificially. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So here's the thing. Loving sacrificially in a marriage for a wife means submitting. Okay? And submitting does not mean subservience. That's a different word. Submitting just means accepting that we're going to play different roles. Jesus submits to the will of the Father. I don't think it's too much to ask a wife to imitate Christ. Right? Jesus submits to the will of the Father, and the Father gives him the responsibility of judging the world. Submissiveness is not subservience, it's just understanding your role. Okay? But for husbands, we're supposed to be willing to die. Jesus died for the church. That's what it means for a man to love sacrificially. Are we teaching our young men this? Are you willing to die? And you know, physical death, frankly, the easiest kind of death there is. But letting your own requirement to take care of yourself die, to put yourself first, dying to that, dying to self, that's what that dying to self means, that's a lot harder. I mean, any of us would push our wife out of the way or push our kids out of the way if a car was coming and let the car hit us instead. We'd step in front of a bullet. But saying no to that night out, you know, that night out with the guys when your kid has a performance that you really should be at, or your wife really needs you to help her out with a project and you put your own needs in front of hers, that's hard. But that's dying. So we need to teach our kids, this is how you love your spouse. That's the first skill that we need to teach. The second skill is this, how to handle money. How to handle money. Now, my daughter I have a 22-year-old daughter. She just graduated from college. She has two things, a degree, they both begin with D, and debt. A degree and debt. Now, we helped. I gave both my kids a specific amount of money. I said, this should get you through a state school. With this and a part-time job, you could graduate from college with no debt, and helped them get their first car. They may not appreciate my help because the cars were pretty bad, but helped them get their first car, gave them enough money to get through school with a job that they could graduate. But she still graduated with that. That's fine. She got her degree in math with a concentration in discrete analysis and a minor in chemistry. So she's a little smart, okay? So my daughter with a degree in math, major in discrete analysis, minor in chemistry, looks at me just a week or two ago and she said, Dad, I just sat down and looked at everything that I owe for school, looking at my earning potential right now. Why didn't anyone tell me? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, Dad, I should have had a class in high school about how to handle money. They should have talked to me about debt. She goes, Dad, do you know how stupid debt is? Now, I have been telling her this, but I got to be honest. I didn't do it enough. I didn't really sit down and give her the practical skills that she needed. And so we're doing that. She's doing that now. She's learning it now. Luckily not when she's 35 and still has college debt. I mean, she's going to be out of it in a year or two because she's committed. But we got to teach our kids how to handle money. We have to help them understand, first of all, how important money is. Jesus told 38 parables. 16 of them were about money. 16, almost half of his parables were about money. There's 500 verses in the Bible about faith. There's 500 verses in the Bible about prayer. There's 2,000 verses in the Bible about money. Right? 10% of the verses in the Bible, in the Gospels, 10% of the verses in the Gospels have to do with money. 10%. Yeah. Tithe is words. So money is incredibly important. It's what Jesus talked about it a lot. By the way, these numbers are from Howard Dayton at Compass Financial, a great resource if you want to teach your kids about money. So then we need to help them understand the importance. Secondly, we need to help them understand the concept of stewardship. Think of a couple of parables, for instance, that relate to this. One is the parable of the talents, right? The rich man gave 10 talents to one, 5 talents to another, and 1 talent to the last. The guy that got 1 sat on it, didn't do anything with it. The guy with 5, maybe it's 3 and 5, but the other 2 guys doubled it. That's stewardship, right? The prodigal son took his inheritance and squandered it. He was not a good steward. The ultimate point of that story is God's love for us no matter what we do. But in the middle of that story is a lesson on foolishness when it comes to money. If you're not a good steward of your money, what do you end up doing? Living with pigs and eating pig food. It's a good thing to tell your kids. If you don't take care of your money, you're going to end up eating pig food. You don't want to live like that. You got to be a good steward. So what do you tell your kids? So you tell your kids, hey, you need to invest your money, not spend your money. Every dollar, I've told my kids this a little bit, and I'm telling them even more now. Like every dollar you spend, is this an investment or is this an expenditure? An investment comes back to you in some way, right? An expenditure is just here today, gone tomorrow. It's just gone. You got to spend some money, right? But if you look at the dollars that you have like a steward, you're like, I got to invest this money. I've got to get a return on this money. And so looking at the way that you do that. This is why my daughter understands the ridiculousness of debt. Yeah, the principal was invested in an education. The interest is just money she's spending, right? So there's just this attitude that we need to help. Are you investing money or are you just spending your money? And then the third thing about money I think we really need to teach our kids is about generosity. We need to teach them to be generous with God, recognizing that it's His anyway. So giving back to God, obviously, a tithe and offerings above our tithe. We need to teach them to be generous to others. How do you teach kids to be generous to others? You show them that by doing it yourself. And then finally, we need to teach them even to be generous to their family, which means in many cases saving for the future. The best way we can be generous with our family after we give them the time that they need is to save money for the future so that if something happens to us in particular, or just we get to an older age for our wives, that we can enjoy life, we can have the life that God made for us. All right? All right, then last thing we need to teach them to do is we need to teach them how to win a fight. Now, I'm not talking about boxing lessons, okay? I'm not talking about Taekwondo class. I'm really talking about how do you win the kinds of fights that our kids are in today. The kinds of fights that our kids are in today are not for their physical safety. They're for their heart and their mind and their soul. Those are the fights that our kids are in. Our boys are having access to stuff that none of us would when we were their age we would have just not been able to handle it. And many of them can't. How are we equipping our kids to win this fight for their heart, mind, and soul? So here's a verse, 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14. I love this verse from Paul, the end of 1 Corinthians. He says, be on your guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be men of courage. Be strong. Do everything in love. So this gives us actually 3 great points to teach your kids how to win a fight. First of all, be vigilant. Nobody wants to get sucker punched. And the world will sucker punch your kids. The world will come from unexpected areas, and it'll come from places that you think are innocent. But we need to teach them to be on their guard, to be aware, to not be caught unawares. Then how do you do that? How do you fight? How do you be ready for a fight? Well, first of all, you need to know what you believe. You need to live a life of courage. In fact, the phrase "be men of courage," you could translate that phrase "act like men." Act like men, because it's expected that a man would be courageous. So being courageous means being willing to step forward, being brave, right? Being willing to stick up for what you believe in, because you know what you believe in, now you're willing to stick up for it. And then being strong means being prepared, right? Nobody gets strong. You have to become strong. You have to practice. And so being full of faith and courage and strength is a great way to win a fight. And then finally, he says, do everything in love. And so this is sort of the encompassing part of winning a fight. The point of winning a fight isn't to destroy the other person. The point of winning a fight is to build God's kingdom. The point of winning a fight is to bring God glory. The point of winning a fight is to be a testimony for the truth of Christ's death and resurrection. That's the point of winning a fight. You have to do it in love, not in anger, not in self-righteousness or, right? We're going to do it in love. So these are the three skills then. How to love teach your kids, teach your grandkids, teach the people that you're mentoring, how to love their spouse, how to handle money, and how to win a fight. Now, I'm going to give you two practical ideas, and then we're going to go to the questions. So the first one is this. If you really, there is a book that you could teach your kids, that you could take a kid that you're mentoring, young man or woman that you're mentoring, or a grandkid through. There's a book that I would just encourage you that you need to help them really get this book, okay? And let me give you the title of the book. You ready? It's called Proverbs. Okay? Proverbs. So how do you teach your kids Proverbs? Here's a really simple way. Have a meeting every week. Every week you assign this homework. Read the next chapter in Proverbs, pick a verse, and next week we're going to talk about it. And then when you sit down and you talk about that verse, you say, okay, what does this mean? And how does this apply to my life? How can I use it this next week? And then the next week, say, all right, next chapter, pick a verse. And then you sit down and you say, what does this mean? How does this apply to my life? How can I use it this week? And do that. You have 31 chapters. You could do that in a year. You got holidays and vacations and stuff like that. You could do that in a year, right? You could go pretty deep into 31 pieces of wisdom in a year. And then the next year, do it again. And then the next year, do it again. And then the next year, do it again. And if you have I want to say, especially if you have a 5, 6, 7-year-old, and you could make this a practice that every week we talk about a verse out of Proverbs, and we're just going chapter by chapter, and you imagine the legacy you could build into a man or woman's heart by helping them read a chapter of Proverbs every week and picking out a verse and figuring out how to apply it to their life. It would radically, radically change their life. The second practical tool I want to give you is this. I think of those three, probably the one that we do the worst at is how to handle money. I don't think we do a great job of that. And there's some great resources out there. I mentioned Compass, Howard Dayton's ministry, Compass. I want to also mention Dave Ramsey's ministry. And he has a Total Money Makeover book and Financial Peace University, but he has one for kids. So I really want to encourage you, if you've got a young person that you have the opportunity, go get that and go through it with them. And then they won't know that you don't do any of that stuff. So it'll be good for you too, because as you're teaching them, you could start doing those things too. And if your money's not under control, you can get your money under control. All right. So let's go to our groups. We've got some questions on the sheets. We'll go to our groups for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back at 5 of, and we'll do a little wrap up. All right. So let me pray for you really quick and go to your groups. Father, help us figure out the skills that we need to teach our kids, our grandkids. Help us to be good dads, granddads, and mentors. Give us some wisdom now during this time of question and answer. In Jesus' name, amen. So how many of you think you did a good job teaching your kids how to win a fight the way that we talked about it? Anyone? Does this make sense to teach your kid how to win a fight with those 5? Vigilance, faith, courage, strength, love? Vigilance, faith, courage, strength, love. Good things. Well, guys, look, none of us wants our kids to fail. All right? You can use these skills and you can teach them these lessons, but you can do it from 2 points of view. There's not a secular person who doesn't believe in God that would disagree really with anything that we said today. Okay? So this has been very practical, but there's one thing you cannot leave out, and that's the gospel. You cannot leave out that in the end, what ultimately makes us able to love our spouse well, what ultimately makes us able to manage our money in a way that has greater impact than you would expect, that what makes us able to win a fight in love, the only reason those things are possible is because Christ died for us. and takes away our unrighteousness, makes it possible for us to be righteous. Rose again from the dead, cleanses us from sin. If that's not the undercurrent of everything you're teaching, well, this is just a good moral philosophy, right? So I really want to encourage you, drench these things with the gospel. Drench these things with the gospel. You want to be a master builder, right? You want to be a master builder, and you want to have an apprentice, and you want your apprentice to become a master. And to become a master, an apprentice, he's got to be taught, he's got to be shown, he's got to be held accountable. Watch them, walk with them as they become the master. Let's pray. Father, as we go out into the rest of this week, Lord, and into our world, I pray, Father, that you would inspire us to be the dads, the grandfathers, the mentors that we're called to be. Lord, help us to make a difference in people's lives, people who are not as far along on the journey as we are, whether they're our kids or someone else's. Lord, help us to teach them how to love their spouse well, how to manage money according to biblical principles, and how to win a fight with love and not with hate. And Lord, bless these guys. We are walking back out into a world like sheep among wolves, Lord. So make us wise, Lord, and help us to live sinless lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Bye, guys. I love you. Have a great week.
Hello, this is Tommy Belam, pastor of The Church in Butler. Thank you for watching this Man in the Mirror Bible study series. My prayer is that you've been challenged to become the strong Christian that God desires each of us to be. If you've tuned in and you don't know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, I would like to pray with you and for you. I can be reached at the church office at 478-862-5966. If you don't have a home church, we'd like to invite you to visit us at any of our weekly services. Please come and join us. We'd love to see you. For more Man in the Mirror Bible teachings, tune in each week to your local Flint Cable, Channel 14. Thank you, and may God bless you as you grow in Him.
A child needs to know that it doesn't make any difference whether I get picked for the team or the honor society or I'm wandering with the cool kids. I know that my dad really loves me. If you're designing a path and there is a place that there is danger for the motorist, you put a guardrail there. And it's the same way if you're a father. When you're helping to design the path your child is going to take and you're trying to help them navigate that, you see the places where there is potential danger and you put up guardrails. And if you don't, your kid will think that you don't care about them. A child can accidentally turn out wrong, but turning out right is no accident. Yes, I love you, and no, you can't have your own way.